Welcome to Windows on the World. Got a great show for you today. The return of Stephen Strong from Australia of ForgottenOrigin.com. Evan, his son, is going to be helping us on the slides. We've got some slides to show you. And Lea Kapitelli is also in the studio with Stephen. So we're going to be talking about an artifact that's been found, which again rewrites history. How many times have the Strongs rewritten history? Many times if you've watched our shows that go back to about 2014. And of course, most of the world isn't that interested, and the academic world obviously doesn't want to know in most of these cases. But just to preface what we're going to be talking about, this is from ForgottenOrigin.com, and it's the press release for this new artifact that's been found, which could rewrite history. An incredibly rare, sacred square metal seal that can only reside in the Chinese Emperor's Royal Court has been unearthed 90 kilometers inland from Darwin. We believe that this ancient metal seal is the most important global discovery of both the 20th and the 21st centuries. So with that, I'm going to bring in Stephen and Lea.
Hey, g'day, mate. How are you? Thank you so much for bringing this on. Yeah, it's a pretty wild claim to make, isn't it? The most important global discovery of the last 2 centuries. Wow.
Indeed. So tell us more, Stephen.
Yes, well, I will. Right. Stop me at any stage as we go through this, mate, because we'll try and get this in the full hour because there's a fair bit in it. Okay, it starts like this. About 5 years ago, we've got 2 people who live up in the Northern Territory. Their names are Jono and Janice. I'm not going to give more details than that because we really don't need to do that at the moment. And what happened was they bought a farm. And what Jono did is he went down to the bottom of the farm. And I've got to explain something about the Northern Territory because I'm pretty sure most of your viewers in Bulgaria and other places probably don't know much about it. It primarily is the northern part of Australia. And what people aren't aware of, it's basically a slab of land that sits on top of a massive artesian basin that goes from Darwin to Alice Springs, which is about 1,500 kilometres. And it just basically sits on top of water. Now, what happened was he was clearing some land down near the bottom, and he was moving some tyres and slashing and burning some grass. And the slasher came in and he cut everything up, and then he stopped the slasher and looking underneath there was a metal piece that was sticking up out of the ground. And he got a set of pliers, dug it out, took it back home to his place, and then they actually cleaned it. And now they got into a bit of trouble for that. I've got to explain, Mark, that what they did was they cleaned the patina off the actual the artefact. Now, people, you've got to understand something. These guys are not archaeologists because someone ripped him for doing it. I think, oh, for God's sake, come on. These guys are just people, and they haven't done a degree in archaeology. So they took it to the sink and cleaned off the patina. And lo and behold, and Leah's going to put up a picture, that is what they found. Now, it's a 9-inch square, and it's metal. Now, this is where it starts to get interesting, because what happened was, to begin with, they thought it was Egyptian, because this is an old script from China. I mean, the Chinese and Japanese we know today doesn't look like this, but this goes back a long way. They originally thought it was Egyptian, and people said, no, it's not, and they didn't know what it was. And for 3 years, they had this thing on their farm. And I was told on one occasion, you haven't heard this, Lea, on one occasion, Janice was out mowing, and somehow someone dropped that seal on the ground and she mowed it. Oh. And it flew up and hit the shed. So I can tell you it's pretty tough metal, guys, because it's been through a fair bit. It's been in the ground for nearly 2,000 years laying in the mud, and then it got mowed on when it got dragged out. And what happened was they were about to give up on the whole thing. They just didn't know what it was, and they were getting pretty frustrated with it. And they went into town, and I won't say where the town is because we don't need to know that. And there working in the general store was a Chinese lady. Mm-hmm. And she brought it in and said, what's this? And this woman started crying. She said, my God, this is the Emperor stuff. This has come from the Royal Court. And that began the process, mate, because until then, they didn't know what it was. But unfortunately, Mark, they made a mistake. they went and saw 2 government-sponsored archaeological groups in Darwin. And they told them, oh, it's just another seal. It's probably worth $50, $100. And in fact, one of them, which was the Chinese Museum, which doesn't have one Chinese person in the museum, they're all Caucasian, he was prepared to offer $100 for it and just get it out of our hands, and said it's nothing. It was just dropped by gold miners in the Northern Territory in the 19th century. And Mark, for those people who don't know, quite a few Chinese came to Australia to mine for gold. And they'd come there for a while. Quite a few of them, and let's be honest, were massacred, weren't they, Leah? Like the original people. The white fellas here weren't keen on black fellas, and they weren't keen on Chinese. So it was a dangerous place for them to go. So they all said that. End of story. The Australian group had said, no, this is what it is. Nothing to see here, ladies and gentlemen. If you want to give me that, I could just take it off your hands for $100 and we'll see what happens. Well, they sort of believed them for a while, but after a while, they started telling them other things that contradicted what they were told before. And they realized that both these people were selling exactly the same story, and they'd been colluding together. So they decided to go outside Australia. And that was a good idea, because what they did was they went and contacted the Menzies Foundation. I think his name's Ian Hudson. And I'm sure, Mark, you'd be aware of Menzies in 1421. And then they contacted the British Museum, which is slightly up a level or 6 levels above what they got in Australia. And then they contacted a gentleman, a scholar from America, and they were all saying the same thing. This is not 100 years old. This is not 200 years old. They didn't know the age, but they knew it was between 700 years to 3,000 years. There's a big gap there, okay? So that's what they knew. And then what happened was the British Museum and the Menzies Foundation, they worked together with the mob from America. So we're crossing the divide there. And they started contacting all their links, and they came back and told us, this is amazing. You've got something here that's way different. And what they did is they put out a preliminary report. And what I'd like to do is to read some of the comments there. Now, the first comment is made by I'm going to get this wrong, Dr. Lak Yu Ping. He's the curator of Chinese paintings and prints at the British Museum. Now, that is a level or two above what the others are doing. And what he said there, okay, what he basically said was a copper alloy seal bearing Chinese inscriptions was discovered near, I won't say the place. Preliminary metallurgical and epigraphic analysis suggests the object predates any known modern or colonial presence in the region. So what they were saying is, at the very least, whatever happened here, whenever that got there, is before 1421, it's before Captain Cook, it's before the Dutch, it's before the Portuguese, and it's before the Spanish. Well, that changes the history a little bit, but it certainly got them interested. Now, Ed Liu, who's a really brilliant American scholar, he went further to say the precision of casting and alloy composition suggests the imperial foundry origins. And then he mentions 4 dynasties that go from the 7th to the 14th century. Now, it turns out, Mark, the ones he mentioned were incorrect. It was older, okay? And we know that because we're going to get that to a sec. So now what we've got is we've got some of the top experts in the world saying, well, this Chinese seal that's found 90 kilometers inland from Darwin, it's from the Royal Foundries. Now, we can tell the listeners at the moment a bit more about how it was made, because we have this information from the top scholars, and that includes China. They're coming up, and Leah's got a big one to read about that. And what we found is that this was a 20-year period. There were 9 separate castings that took place, and every time that the casting took place, full ceremony was given to every casting. But where it gets really interesting, mate, is they also got a metallurgical study done. And this is where it started. This is where it hit the fan. I won't say what it is. It hit the fan. This is where it gets tricky. And this is what they said. They said the alloy composition was remarkable, showing advanced metallurgical knowledge inconsistent with colonial or industrial contamination. Now, what they found there, mate, is this particular seal is made of 27 different elements. Now, when you're first making metal to begin with, you put in your copper and you put in your zinc or you put in your iron and you chuck in a couple of things, but not 27. But the problem becomes really massive because I've seen the metal readout, and two of the components there are molybdenum and titanium. Now, Mark, I'm sure you're pretty aware of the fact that there are fairly recent pieces of work.
Yes.
Molybdenum was first used in industrial use in 1891. Titanium was first used in 1941. Now, this particular seal is at least 700 years old, but we know it's actually 1,900 years old. Well, that becomes a problem because they're using chemicals we've only just discovered in the 20th and the 9th, well, basically both in the 20th century they were first used. But this is going back to the 2nd century, not even the 4th. And we'll get to that in a sec. Leah's going to read that in a second. So now we've got a double problem. Number one, what is a seal that is found in the emperor's court that takes 20 years to build? What's it doing in Darwin? Now, some people have said, oh, no, it's just picked up by a common old Chinese gold miner. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I can tell you that no common Chinese gold miner is even allowed to walk into the emperor's court. And do you know that this particular seal can only be touched by the emperor or someone of his lineage? So if this Chinese gold miner put his finger on that seal, do you know what would happen to the Mark? He'd be dead for insulting the emperor and even walking into the place. And here's another point. If he did manage to steal it, he drops it when he comes here and doesn't pick it up. It's priceless. Doesn't make sense. Wasn't true. So what actually happened, mate? And I'm going to get to the original story in a sec because it backs it up. What I'm now going to do is I'm going to ask Leah to read what turned up 2 days ago. I've written up a report of this, but I haven't even put it out yet, Mark. So you're getting this hot off the press. It hasn't even gone out. And this comes from, you've got to remember, during that period of time, the Chinese were very much into Taoism. Okay, yes. I'm sure you're aware of that. Well, what happened here was when this was put out in China, and I mentioned this before we started, it went viral. Everyone was making comments about it. And then what happened was this gentleman went and did some consultation. And Leah, good luck with this because she's going to read this out. And there are some very tricky words in here that I couldn't pronounce. Off you go, Leah.
Okay. After consultation with Master Zhang of the Tianxi Mansion and joint appraisal by Master Kim Jing from Jixia Cave of Mount Ma, Master Yu Zhui from Lingzhou Palace of Mount Kotong, and Master just give me one moment, Yujingji from Guizhou of Kulun Mountain, and in reference to volume 271 of the Taoist Canon Seal Register.
Stop. Okay, we'll stop there for a second. By the way, any Chinese people listening, I'd like to apologize for that.
I did a better job than you.
I know, I couldn't even read it out. I'd like to apologize because we are dancing in the dark with this. Really, we had no real knowledge until this fell upon us. But what he's actually talking about there is he went in consultation and spoke to Master, by the way, ZH is SH.
Shang.
Master Shang of the mansion. Okay. Yeah. And then they looked at the joint appraisal by 3 masters of the past. And then they went into volume 271 of the Taoist Canon Seal Register. And I just wanted to explain to everyone what that is every seal that's been made in the Imperial Foundry, because it's made in the Imperial Foundry, they have a record of it. And what they do is they put some ink on top, stamp it on a piece of paper, and then they put that in the book, and that is their register. And that's what they did. So the first part is to validate that he's gone through the right processes by looking at the work, by the appraisal by 3 other masters, and in consultation with another master. This guy is obviously a Taoist priest, as you can tell. Now here comes the clanger. This is what they found. And what it did was it changed some of what even our British Museum experts had said, because we're all dancing in the dark with this at the moment, and everyone's still trying to work out exactly what it said. But these are the people who made it. So tell us what was written there once they found it.
It has been confirmed that this seal is one of the 5 directional seals cast by Shang Daoling, the Celestial Master. It is approximately 1,900 years old. 3 of these seals are extant in China, preserved by Mount Longhu, Mount Imei, and Mount Kontong, respectively, while the other 2 have been lost. The mark on the side of the seal you have obtained indicates a direction, east or center.
So what that means, Mark, is there are 5 of these. North, south, east, west, and the one in the middle, which is the center one. We suspect, and of course we don't know for sure because we're not the experts here, but I do know there's a symbol there that represents the center of all, the universe, and the rotation of the earth and which way it marks, and it's in the center of it. I'm inclined to think this might be the central one of the 3, but we aren't sure on that. We can't be sure. But what we need to understand is, who is this person? What's his name? Shang Daoling, is it?
Yeah.
Shang?
Yeah, Shang
Daoling.
Daoling. Yeah.
Well, this particular person is the celestial deity. Now, Mark, I've got to explain something. When I first started doing this, I started talking about the Chinese gods, and I was picked up straight away on that. They were quite offended I said that. They don't call them gods, they call them deities. And most of their deities are actually people who've died, and then when their spirit is passed over, they've become a god. Now, this particular god, Xiao Daoling, he is the celestial master, but he is the only god that has at least 12 other titles. He is I love some of these. He's the Marshal of the Thunder Department, the Chief of the Palace, the Chief of the 28 Constellations, the Inspector of the 5 Directions. We mentioned that one. The Chief of the 5 Tiger Generals. And so it continues. He is basically the top level there is. And in the next article, I'm making a point there. I'm going to say this is if you were to put a Christian bend on this and say, what's it equivalent to? It would be equivalent to the Grail or the spear that was used on the cross. You know how everyone's been chasing that forever. Now, these seals, the 5 directional seals, were made by, now to tell you something more about this particular being, he was the one who was actually called in by the emperor that made the terracotta army. And everyone's familiar with that. But he found that emperor was not a good emperor, and he walked away from him and went into a cave, and everyone respected that. And then he came back later with a new emperor, and they lauded him as someone really special. So this particular piece of work is found 90 k's off the coast now, but we suspect that couple of thousand years ago, when the sea level did rise by about 3 to 4 meters. And remember, Chinese boats are flat bottomed. They're not like Spanish and American boats that have a keel. Like all of those boats, they're flat bottomed. And when they sail, I've been told they always keep close to the land. So a flat bottom boat, if the sea level rose up 2 meters, it could be parked where this particular thing was found. Now, it was put on a boat, and when it was put on that boat, it was put on there with a shrine called the Zen Mazuk Shrine, and it must stay with it forever. They can never be separated. So what we've now got is we've got confirmation from China that it's one of the 5 directional seals by their celestial master. To be the celestial master on the other side puts you on the top of the list there. That's not just, we don't know much about China, but that one's pretty easy. Okay, you don't have to argue that point. It's been checked in the register. It is not. It wasn't thrown by a miner 100 years ago because it's 1,900 years old. And it's got chemistry in there that shouldn't be there. So we've got two issues. Number one, we were told the first time anyone sailed to other countries was around Europe, Columbus and Ferdinand Magellan. And all those people started sailing in the 15th and 16th century, the 1400s and the 1500s. That's when we start to sail to other places. Before that, we didn't. Well, here we are 1,900 years back, just after Christ has been put up on the crucifix, and these guys are in Australia, sailing there. So that starts a bit of an issue about, okay, that's a bit different, but now we've got chemistry. And what is molybdenum and titanium?
Stephen, can you just move slightly towards Leah because you're going right out of the frame?
Oh,
so
sorry.
that's,
Okay.
yeah,
Am I
they're
back?
closer together. That's perfect.
Honestly,
Yeah.
it's much better Leah being in there than me being off the camera, honestly. I can see what's there, mate. I just prefer to see Leah's face than mine. But if you insist, we'll stick it
Well,
in there.
it just looks a bit strange with just half your head there and then just a bit of your hair.
I know, I'm happy with that. Anyway,
just
they can
mime
look
it,
at
yeah.
Leah. She's quite pretty. You can look at her while I'm talking.
I'll mime it while I talk.
So we've got an issue there, mate. But
Yeah.
the answer to this is not in the chemistry. It's not in the British Museum. It's not even in the registers because they said 2 were missing. And notice they didn't say where they're gone. They didn't know, did they? So when it comes to this part of the story, they've got nothing more. But we've done some research there and we found out something quite interesting. When the first archaeologists went up to Northern Territory, all the elders came up and told them, you're not the first. And they told them about a group of people. And I want to share with you what they said. And I've got some quotes here from the Dreaming that back this up. They said, no, there were people who came well before you. And they gave descriptions, which I've read in Dreaming stories. And their descriptions are this. These people came to our island in families, not sailors. And as you may know this yourself, sailors don't go exploring with women because they would consider bad luck. I'm sorry about that, Leah, but that is true. But if you take all these women on a boat, man, you want to be awful careful because this is bad luck, and children. They brought them as families and they described them. They said the women wore sarongs. And when they came to this country, and by the way, I've checked, they were given part of 2 tribal places. And they mention the tribes. I've got it written down somewhere, but I can't find it with me at the moment. And they were also given the coast to work. And they grew rice. They had looms. And they wove sarongs. And they built houses. Now, where it gets interesting, mate, is they were growing rice. And do you know to this day in the Northern Territory, there is a strand of rice that's still growing there? Now, rice never grew in Australia, but it's still there now. And it's gone back to its original form because we believe these people were living here for thousands of years, not hundreds, but thousands. Now, where it gets interesting is this. It says they grew rice. That's against the Dreaming. It's against all original stories to dig the soil up and leave it uncovered. You must bury it straight away, not till it up and then put the rice in for 6 months. That's against the law. But they let them do it. And you know what also read? In this story about these people, they said the women were beautiful. They were wonderful people. They really liked them, mate. And they were staying there for a long time. But the men, they had no comment about them except that they didn't like them, but they didn't dislike them, and they wanted nothing to do with them. And they thought they were odd. Well, did you know that all of the people who were sailing these boats for the emperor, they had the honor of A, being monks, and B, being eunuchs. And I can see why the original men would look upon those men and say, no, I don't know what to think of them. Because you've got to remember when Philip first came to Australia, you know what he was asked to do when he went to Manly Beach? pull down his pants so the Aboriginal men could work out whether he was a man. I wonder where that came from. But anyway, we'll get back to what's here. So what we've got in this story is that the original people had allowed them to come to this country. Now, this is where it gets interesting. How long have they been there for? Well, I can answer that, and I'm going to read straight from the Dreaming. And I'm going to read a quote here. In fact, I'm going to get Leah to read this because there's a couple of original words in there that are quite difficult to pronounce. And we'll see how she goes with original because she didn't do well with Chinese. Here we go. Off you go, Leah. Read this one.
The great Zhang Wu and his sisters met Biani and exchanged goods with them. In particular, some beautiful feathered string. Zhang Wu found the Biani's spoon when they left, which was a charcoal black from stirring Trepang cooking fires, and said, this is good color. I'll have this for my own. And he used the black paint to paint sacred designs. The great Langjung also came in touch with the Biani, for it is said he ate rice which they grew for their own use.
So what we've got here is they're the two creation spirits. Those two spirits I know quite well are the spirits that created everything. So when they're wandering around the Northern Territory, guess who they ran into? These people. They're already there. And Zhang Wu, he actually decided, okay, I love your beautiful feathered strings and I like your black. I'll take both those. And the other creation spirit ate rice with them. So what we've got here is we've got the two creation spirits trading with them and eating with them. So what does that tell about the people who follow? They've got to do the same. But I want to make the point that this is a creation story and they're in it there. So we've got a story of sarongs growing rice. I mean, sounds very... And by the way, one other thing I've got to make the point. They made it very clear they had very light skin. So that rules out the Indonesians and the Indians because they have darker skin. It's not them. It's not the Macassans. It's further on. They're wearing sarongs. They've got looms. They're growing rice. They're Chinese. It's as simple as that. Now, that now means we've got an issue here because they were telling all the experts, and all the experts said, oh, no, you got it mixed up. You got it mixed up with the Macassans who came 400 years ago. No, it's 1,900 years, the date for that particular piece of jewelry. And the Macassans didn't come until 400 years ago. So it's not them, it's the Chinese. Now, that is going to create some problems in Australia. And it's a major problem, Mark, and it's actually, as much as I hate to say it, it's a political problem because they were there for thousands upon thousands of years, and I read the story about how they left. And by the way, this fits in with a very important Chinese story. What they said was they saw smoke coming from Celebes, which is the islands of Indonesia, a long way off. And they turned around to the people they'd been with for a long time and said, we have to leave. We have to go. Now, I do know for a fact that when the fleet went out with 300 boats, they saw smoke that meant they had to go back to China. And the 300 boats broke up into three groups and they went three different ways back to China because they were being invaded. And these people saw the smoke and said, we've got to go back. So they left. And you know, to this day, in Australia, up in the Northern Territory, there is a site there that belongs to the Barney people, Baini. That's what they were called. And it is their sacred place, and it's in Australia, but they're Chinese. That means that those Chinese people were living there for a long period of time, and they never fought with them. They enjoyed their company, and the Chinese came to learn something. That's very important. We'll talk about that later. They didn't come here to learn how to make the pyramids because they could do that. They didn't come here to learn how to make a wall because they made one. Pretty big wall, I've been told too. They didn't come to learn anything technological because the original people couldn't teach them. But they did come for something. So now we've got an issue. We've got them there for a long period of time. They're allowed to stay there. They've been given part of the coasted almond land to go fishing and hunting for the men, who are probably eunuchs, and the women do all the rice farming, and they make the looms and stuff like that. And they all get together, and then they had to go back. They tried to tell the experts from Australia, and they said that didn't happen. Well, now it did. Now it has happened. We now know for a fact that they were there. And this explains why they took one of their most sacred objects, possibly even the center seal, and took it down to Australia, and took that boat, would have had members on that boat that were direct lineage to the emperor. Because remember, only the emperor or lineage of that emperor could even touch that seal. And that seal also had around the edge of it, not on the front piece there. Have you got a shot on the side? We might see if we can get one there. Go back one.
That one?
Yeah, you can see a bit down the bottom there. Put that one up. You might see on the side there's some markings on that. Thank you. You can see them a bit more there. Can you see that? That goes on all four sides, and that is a directional map that tells them how to get from China to the top end of Australia. And that would have been put on the boat also. Now, the seal, the shrine, and the boat can never be separated. So our understanding is where this is found, this metal piece, the rest of the boat and the shrine will also be found. And we're going to get onto that soon enough. Now, some of the other ones, not so much that side. There's another one that's got a beautiful set of mountains on it. And another one's got about 25 stars on it. And each side tells them something different. And we've taken quite a few. That's the same one. There's a different one there. You can put that up.
Okay, we'll just...
Yeah, there's a different one there with different markings on it. You can see that again. They all are directional things, and there's ones on the other side again. So what we've now got is
this it?
Yeah, that's a different. Oh, there's the stars over there. Thank you.
Okay.
Right. Now, can you do the top bit for me, please? Because this is where it gets interesting. You've got a shot of the top. Because this is where it gets, keep looking for it, you'll find it. Okay, keep going. Okay, 90, yeah, we know it's 90. Yeah, keep going, it'll turn up. You get, there it is. Hey, this is where it gets weird. Because there's two sets of bloody alloys here. You got the copper alloy, and you can see the color of that, can't you? Right? It's that sort of golden color. Then you got a different alloy, which is made of iron. Completely different. Iron and nickel. The first one's copper and zinc. This is iron and nickel. Now, guess which one has the molybdenum in it? That one. And do you know what goes in the center of that hole? The ink. And what they do is they put the ink in there, they dip the brush in, and they turn it over, then brush the ink on the other one, then stamp it, because it can be a seal. It's got about 5 different roles. One of them is a seal. So that would be the only part of the whole of this seal that would be touching a liquid, wouldn't it, Leah?
Yes.
Well, why did they put molybdenum in there? Because it's iron. It's a metal hardener.
Mm-hmm.
Now, titanium is the best metal hardener on the planet. Molybdenum comes second or third. The titanium is in the copper one. The molybdenum is in that one. That means that the person who was using this understood what the qualities of molybdenum were, that it was a metal hardener. And now we're talking about a time 1,700, 1,800 years before we even discovered the bloody thing. They already know what it is and know what its function is. So where did they get all this knowledge? Because around
also, Stephen, something's just occurred to me. Do you think that the others are distributed on the compass points in other parts of the world? In other words, when these people formed these communities, they would take one of these seals with them. And you said I'm using the word seal because you kind of implied that. And that would make sense to me that was a seal.
Yeah, it would. There's two that's missing.
That these things are distributed in different parts of the world, that maybe they, north, south, west, and east have got their own.
No, but actually 3 are still in China. They said that in the 3 are in China, but they said 2 have been lost, which means their records right, which are pretty extensive because they've told
Mm.
us everything. They know everything about it, but they don't know where those two went. I think you're right. I think one went to Australia. I've been told that when one of the
It would make
dynasties,
sense if there's a new spiritual homeland for it to be
that's
there.
what we're talking. We're
Yes.
getting on to why they came, Mark.
Yeah.
Why did they come? This is, for me, now we're starting to get to the real nuts and bolts of this. It's okay to say they're here. We proved it. Okay. Nobody can argue the point. And no one's going to tell me some poor bloody Chinese gold miner that went to Australia that might get killed, might find some gold, will be carrying that and dropping it. It's just not going to happen.
But
Forget
wasn't there a
it.
story about that, like that, about 10 years ago with that artifact that looked like a giraffe, which had all those different alloys in it?
Yeah.
And it was suggested by the authorities that someone came from Africa and dropped it in Australia.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
We get that all the time. And,
Yes.
and everything in Australia that's found that doesn't belong there, they'll all say the same thing. It was dropped. I've got another example. A Shaolin statue was found when they were making roads in Darwin in 1870, and it was underneath a banyan tree, and it was found 4 feet beneath the surface. 4 feet. A banyan tree is a fig tree, right? 4 feet. Therefore, and he said the tree was 250 years old, right? And he found it in 1870. You take 1870, that gets you down to 1620, right? Do you know what everyone said about the Shaolin statue, mate? It was dropped by a gold miner in the 1900s. They still say it to this day, 1800s rather, dropped by a gold miner. So when he dropped it, straight after that, somehow or other, 4 feet of dirt stayed up, and then a tree grows on top of it again, but they still claim it's 100 and a bit years old.
That's
You
how
can't
history
win
is
with that.
created, isn't it? When we
Oh,
actually get to the cover story of
yeah,
the historical facts, the cover story actually doesn't really make any sense.
it makes
And
no
it's very,
sense.
very tenuous indeed. So to actually dismiss alternative theories is the height of hypocrisy, as we know, but it happens all the time.
Well, you know, that Shaolin statue guarantees longevity. And do you know what this statue is, this seal is supposed to do? Guarantee your wealth. Now, the Chinese miners were going to Australia. They had two concerns. I'd say about 1/3 of them were killed. So I want longevity. The one statue I wouldn't lose is a Shaolin statue, man, because if I lose the statue, they would think, well, if I've lost the statue, I'm going to die. And the other thing I wouldn't want to lose is something guarantees me wealth. This thing. Now, those are the things they're saying they're dropping. Now, they brought this all the way from China, and they brought these sacred things. This one's priceless. It's absolutely priceless. You can't put a price on it. It's like putting a price on the Grail. You wouldn't lose it. And if you dropped it, this thing is about 9 centimeters by 9 centimeters and weighs about 1.5 kilos. If you drop it, mate, and you drop it on your foot, you probably break your toe. And you'd have to be blind and deaf not to know you've dropped it. Otherwise, you'd know you dropped it and you pick it up. But they just keep saying it. But the important part of this story you've started to get onto, why did they come? And we believe they came to sit with the elders and to learn the magic, the wisdom, and the keepers of the old ways. Look, the Chinese were very spiritual people. I'm not so much talking about today with a different government system, but way back then they were very spiritual people. And they knew Australia was where all the great sadhus, all the great wisdom keepers were. They didn't come there to learn how to grow rice. They already knew that. They didn't come here. They built houses. And by the way, the original people didn't copy anything they did because it's against their dreaming. But they let them stay and do things that they wouldn't do because they respected them.
Well, I think this is a very important point also that's missed in academia, is that this integration of population seems to be more common than they like to suggest. They like to suggest that civilization somehow came to an end, like the Indus civilization, Indus Valley, whereas it would make more sense if they spread out from there for particular reasons. And I've been covering that with what they call the Eurasian steppe through Europe. It's a very similar story. It seems that the Scythians, the Vinča, what they call the Vinča culture, which I covered recently, went to White Hills in Serbia, where they say that it's the center of the Vinča culture. It's just because that's where they found the artifacts. But those artifacts the general artifacts, the day-to-day artifacts, they have little altar tables. They're found all the way through Europe. And there's a lot in Central Eastern Europe. So no one seems to have woven that bit together. And this is really obvious stuff. And it looks like this integration of population and acceptance of different cultures was much more common than we are told.
That for me is the most important. Important point in this is it's showing us now that they let in a group of people on a long-term lease where they didn't pay a cent to stay there. They didn't ask them for a part of their rice or part of the clothing they made. In fact, it makes the point in here, they never taught them how to weave. And the original people never asked to do it. So we had a group of people that were very rich, well off, and they were welcomed as brothers and sisters, and they were sad when they left. They never fought with them, and they allowed them to farm the land, keep all of the profits, not ask for anything in return, and then teach them. And I'm thinking, God, can I think of anywhere that's done that recently, that's welcomed another group of people and treated them like brothers and sisters and looked after them and gave them all this hospitality? And I'm thinking, I can't think of anyone that's doing that now. In fact, right now, the whole world is scared of anyone that doesn't come from their country. We're having a big issue in Australia where they want to cut back immigration to nothing because we don't want the others to come in, do we? That's big in Australia right now. We are, in fact, they just did a survey and the majority of Australians want to stop immigration. Now I'm thinking to myself, God, look what these guys showed you and look how you're reacting. We've fallen in a screaming heap. I look upon this as showing us in a fantastic light that we don't have today. The way they treated them and the way that the Chinese people behaved, obviously with impeccable manners, and they were very well liked. They were given the sea to fish in, never asked for fish in return because anyone else would. They asked for nothing in return. It was free rent, free board, and stay as long as you want, just as long as you fit in correctly and treat us well. And then about 200 years ago, the British came. No treaty, no agreement to stay, and just barged in and said, we're staying. And there still hasn't been a treaty. In fact, 3 days ago, Victoria signed a treaty with the original people. That's the first treaty in Australia, 240 years after. Now, the government will not sign a treaty and is never going to. I've got a question for them. In the International Court in The Hague, I wonder how your court case would go and the Chinese court case would go. Who actually had a treaty? The Chinese did. Did the British? No, never had one. So there is that issue. But for me, the important issue is look at what people were doing 2,000 years ago. And you told us we didn't behave like that. Well, we did. I believe they were there well before the actual seal. The seal came later and went 90 k's inland to where the rice is growing. And that's the important part of this, Mark.
Well, if the seal was that important, that would make absolute sense, wouldn't it? You wouldn't send it on the first expedition.
Oh, God, no. No, you would go there once you've got a settlement that's locked in, that's peaceful, that's welcome, and all of the work has been done. All the first misunderstandings have been sorted out. And now we can take something sacred, knowing that these people will never take this office. They didn't take our rice. They didn't take our clothes. Obviously, they don't want anything from the Chinese, but they do want them there to teach them. So therefore, it would be fine to take that down there. And it would be fine for them to go down there. And I've been told from the Chinese that there was an earlier, way back, thousands of years ago, when one of the emperor's dynasties was being under stress, and they left for a while and sailed down to Australia, where they knew it was peaceful, where they knew they could just chill out until things got better. Then they went back. So my understanding is, particularly since the dreaming story tells me that the creation spirits met and ate and traded with the Chinese. That tells me everything I need to know. That goes back thousands and thousands and thousands of years. The seal is a Johnny come lately. It came 1,900 years ago. But I think they were there well before then. And it tells us something about the way we were living way back, where we could go to other countries and other continents. And look how that happened there. The Chinese weren't fighting and the original people weren't fighting. We had two major powers that were getting on like brothers and sisters.
Well, I think there's also the issue of mutual benefit.
Yes.
And as you'll say, learning, which obviously is a big issue now because the society, as we've talked about many times, is degenerating and people are becoming more and more stupid. Well, that's the end of a civilization. I'm always talking about the next civilization because this is definitely coming to an end. So ironically, the technocratic system is the end of knowledge. And these people were obviously very advanced. And the idea, of course, is to teach people today that we're more advanced than anyone in the past.
Oh, no.
And that's the big issue that academia has a lot of the time. And also the integration of population and the abilities of people. So the abilities, the mental abilities of people have definitely gone down in the last few thousand years. There's no doubt about that. Because what about the oral culture? People can't remember anything these days.
No, they can't. No. Now, you're right. I believe that this is giving us an idea. This is how we used to be. Think of this. I mean, these people, I mean, when the Chinese came to Australia, when the white fellas were there, man, they just wanted to kill them. Seriously, and I'm not lying about this. Yeah. They were massacring black fellas and they were massacring Chinese people. They were next after the original people. And the reason why the miners were massacring them was very simply because the Chinese, when they went to a gold field, mate, they were there for about 6 months and they left. They found all the gold. Up our way, we know they came up into the deepest part of the rainforest up there. There are brush box trees that go for 30, 40 meters and they've been sluiced out. They used them as sluice gates. They were only there for 4 years and then they sailed back to China. They knew where the gold was. You know why they knew where the gold was? Because they've been here a long, long time, mate. And when this happened, they just sent them down. And you go up to the Northern Territory and every second original person there has got Asian in their blood. It's part of the tradition up there. When the white fellas came up, they told them the Chinese were here before you. And of course, the white fellas didn't want to hear that, did they? And by the way, I don't think they still want to hear it. I think we're going to have some problems in our country with this one. Because as you know, right now, a lot of people are picking on China and say, oh, we've got to fear them. We've got to hate them. That is not a good idea. They make up 1/4 of the world's population. And I can tell you, when the original people did it, there was no fear. There was no hatred. There was respect, there was sharing, and there was genuine love for each other. Everything was perfect. It seriously was. I've read all the reports, and I'll make a point with you too. In this, they make it clear time after time, the women were wonderful, the women were beautiful, the men, well, you know, we didn't think much of them. I would guarantee you, if you took that attitude and you put two people together, two neighbouring tribes together, and you put them anywhere but in Australia, over a period of time, if they didn't like those men so much, eventually they'd fight. It's just what we do. They didn't understand them properly, they would have fought them, but not here. So we've got something to learn from what happened in Australia thousands upon thousands of years ago when two diverse cultures that basically were living different lifestyles could get together and work as one and work cooperatively, sharing, caring for each other, and having a wonderful arrangement where everyone benefited. That's proper immigration. And we were doing it.
But it also makes sense as well. It actually makes sense because that's generally what would happen in an organic way. I mean, the tribal disputes mainly over land territory, they're sorted out fairly quickly.
Yeah.
Really, when you think about it. Because when we look at the extent of time that we're looking at, I mean, you've got a swastika on that as well. That goes back at least 6,000 years. That's
yeah, you can find that
universal symbol. That's not peculiar to China.
No,
it's found all through Europe. The oldest swastika they say was found in a cave in Bulgaria. But there's also the Tartaria tablets, which were found in Romania. We covered all this recently. So there is symbolism that you've talked about before with the Slater stuff, the universal language.
That's what we're looking at here. And
yes,
you
see, I was going to get onto that. I mean, I don't know much about the symbolism on that, but it would make sense that a lot of this stuff was to do with trading as well. So, like the idea of this universal language, I think it'd be a good thing to mention at this point, because it would make sense that there was a way of people trading around the world so that they understood each other.
Exactly.
And that's just common sense to me.
It is common sense. And if you are wandering around the world like they were, how are you going to communicate? You've got different languages, but if you've got a common language and it's got common symbols, I can communicate with someone else even if they've got a different language, because we share the symbols. You're right. And I believe, and I mean, you've only got to go to the Bible, and it talks about you before the Tower of Babel fell, the whole world spoke one language. And that comes out of the Bible. If people want to challenge that, well, go to the Bible. It's in there, and it's a big story. Once the Tower of Babel fell and we couldn't communicate to one another, the story goes we started fighting. This was from the time before the tower fell. And I got to tell you, that was a time when we had one language, when we just saw what happened between the original and Chinese people. Man, we need to get back to that. We need to fight that again. We need to find that again. And this is what this has come back for, Mark. It's to show you we did do it properly. Not now, not anymore, because you've got to remember, I used to teach history in high school. Do you know what I taught? Wars.
Yes, that's what we learned at school. I mean, the history was fragmented. It was pretty boring, and it was always the cover story. And you had to go years later and look at the real versus the stated goals. What was the real reason they did this? Well, this makes sense, but the cover story never makes sense. And that's the problem with learning history, and that's the problem with academia, because in academia, they can't put together history properly because they're going at it from the wrong angle a lot of the time.
They are. Now, here's a new angle. This is a new angle for them to go at. My argument is this. We also know that the Phoenicians were in Australia at a place called Serena, and we found foundries there. Now, the original people don't make metal, so leave that out straight away. We found foundries. In fact, there was an industrial area of over 2 acres with foundries everywhere. And they found slag and wharves and all sorts of stuff. And in the slag, it was mainly in there? Gold, right? And there's a guy that wrote a paper in 1858 saying that the King Solomon's mines of gold were actually in Australia. And the Phoenicians were mining there and taking it back. And here's the point. They were mining. That's against the dreaming too. You're not allowed to dig up in the ground. You're not supposed to dig up a mine, but they let them do it again. They let them mine. And it shows you these original people are saying, you want to mine? You want to farm? We don't do it, but you can. Now,
if the Phoenicians came from Carthage, which was their main place, to Australia, then it's easy for the Chinese to get there, isn't it?
Oh, much easier.
Kind of obvious.
Oh, mate.
It's a straight line.
It basically goes straight down.
Even if you got lost, you could find Australia from China, wouldn't you?
Oh, look, Chinese have got maps, and they've got a map of Java, and underneath it, they've got another map, and it's called Greater Java. Well, you go to Indonesia, and if you keep sailing south, mate, you're only going to hit one place, Australia. And
well, they did have advanced maps anyway, didn't they? Like the Piri map.
Yeah, and
that's
they
never really been explained.
Java.
How we knew that where the ice was in the North Pole, and it's kind of the actual landmass of Antarctica. How did he know what that looked like under the ice?
Well, now it's starting to come out, Mark, because if they can sail from China to Australia, why can't they sail to other places? Why can't they sail around the whole of the Pacific? And they probably damn did.
Well, it's like the old Silk routes, isn't it, really? I mean, that was where the biblical stories of the trading came from. Of course, Joseph of Arimathea coming to Britain to meet with the Druids.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of stuff I've been doing about that. I won't go into it today. I've done a lot of shows on it. But the people did go a long way. And I think
They
this
did.
is the thing that is forgotten, that they were advanced seafarers. And of course, then we get into who were those red-headed people who kept going around the world.
Oh, the red-headed people in
Yeah.
the New Zealanders will tell you they were there when they got when the Māori people got to New Zealand. They said they were there. They fought.
Yes.
The red-headed
Well, they keep
people
finding
were
this
in
evidence
New
of it
Zealand.
everywhere and then telling us that
Yeah.
the gene came from the Middle East, but they don't really know. But of course,
Yeah.
red hair is revered in the Middle East, but red hair's in my family. But that they say that's Scottish Scandinavian. But when we look at migration patterns, like things like what you found here, they're constantly questioning it, because we're finding evidence all through Europe. I get archaeological news, and they're constantly finding things that don't fit in, but the public don't get to hear about it because it's only a few people who've got a bit of money to do it. They're not that well funded. They find these amazing things and it all gets forgotten about. So in other words, we're not able to put a bigger picture together from what we've been given. And it's things like this that we need to help to find out the true history, because then the true history starts to make sense. It makes a lot more sense.
It does. And it's the encouraging part of this, mate. The one thing that I am encouraged by is part of the team is the British Museum. Now, they are normally, I mean, we're talking Elgin marbles and all sorts of things they've done over the years. We know all that, right? And fine. But because they're involved in this, heavily involved, I want to make the point they've actually co-authored this preliminary report. So they're in it up to their neck. They've made it clear, and they've told us this too. We haven't put it up. This is changing world history. They're actually open to it, which is really encouraging, because normally that would be, you'd think, one of the main bastions of we steady as she goes, we'll keep what we've got. But they're opening up to that, and they're saying this is changing a lot of things. They are aware of the fact there's molybdenum and titanium in there, and they know what that means. Mind you, the Australian group did try and explain it away. They had a go at it, and they said, oh, well, and by the way, we're talking 2%. That's not trace elements. That's a fairly sizable input into the iron part. What they said was, well, molybdenum is found in the soil, which it is, and it could have been absorbed through there. Well, there's a problem with that. There's two. Number one, it's only found in certain places, molybdenum, and I know the place we're at in the soil is very dry and there's not much in it. But more importantly, if it was going to get the molybdenum from the soil, then it needs a lot of soil above to run down into it to be collected. Well, this guy found it with part of it sticking out above the surface. Well, how's the molybdenum going to seep into something when it's sitting on the top? It can't happen. And they tried to put that in to explain a real elephant in the room. What's molybdenum doing there? It can't be there. We've got to say it got leached in. But there's an easy way to prove that. Get a soil sample. And I've already seen it, and I know what the answer is going to be. There's nothing in there like that. And secondly, even if it was, it's got to be 15 meters beneath the surface. It's got to be there for thousands of years for enough of that to seep into it. But here's the problem. It only seeped into one part of it, just the iron part. It didn't go into the other part at all.
Yeah.
So it doesn't fit any way you put it. It was put in there. The molybdenum was put in the iron to make it a hardener, and the titanium was put into the copper to make it a hardener. Now, that's been in the dirt now, sitting in where it actually was in a billabong, which I don't think they know what a billabong is, would you?
No.
Do you know what a billabong is?
I think you better explain it to the viewers.
I think I better, because they're probably not Australian. It's just a long, flat piece of ground there where the water's always there and it never goes away. Well, until they put a road across there, that was in the billabong. So that means for about 7-8 months of the year, it's mud. Yeah. So it would have been sitting in the worst conditions to put something in, sitting in mud for about 8 months of the year. Then what happens? Some of the time it's stinking hot there, like 45 degrees, isn't it?
It's not that bad.
Yeah, well, you'll also have that heat there. And there's one other thing, what can walk over the top of it? Water buffalo, they're everywhere. Oh. Imagine the water buffalo walking over the top of it. And it's been sitting there for thousands of years, and it scrubs up like that. That's titanium. That's what's kept it together. And the molybdenum's kept the other one together. So what we have all up is the Barmy people are the Chinese people. They were there for thousands and thousands of years. And very late in the piece, the ship came down and they came down there. And I'm damn sure this was the one when the whole of the emperors fled for a while. I'm sure they all came down. And then they parked their boat there. And I've been there when it rains. And they're actually having a cyclone right now, aren't they? Yeah, level 3 cyclones hitting Darwin tonight. Right. And I've been there. And what happens, mate, the water, when you're on this, it's on a hill there, it's like creeks just running down everywhere because it just rains maybe 5 or 6 inches in, say, an hour. And the whole of the place, because it's so flat, just becomes one massive swamp. Well, lift the sea level up a couple of levels and you can bring in your Chinese boats and park them there. Yes. And we know that when we go back to that spot, because we know where the spot is, we're going to dig down and we're going to find the boat and the shrine.
That's what I was going to get to conclude about following this up and finding more artifacts and bringing more proof to.
See, the problem is the people that are doing this, mate,
saga that went on.
Are not rich. They don't have a lot of money. They've basically gone broke, paying for all the tests they've had done. Right, and I know them well. I've spent 4 days with them, so I know what they're like as people. They've got no more money. They're going to get a bit more money so they can do thermoluminescence. I've convinced them they've got to do thermoluminescence because they can do it on the seal and they can give you a date when it was made. And we really need that one to finish it off. Once you've got that, you've won the case. But we've already got the register saying it's 1,900 years, and I'm damn sure that's right. Because the Chinese, like the Egyptians, were fastidious in keeping records, more so than we are. They were obsessed with record keeping. If it's in volume 271 of the Taoist Canon Seal Register, it's there. And they would have seen that and they would have compared it, because you can see the picture there now. They would have said, that is the one we're looking for. And I can assure you, the Chinese have made it very clear they would like it to come home. It's pretty obvious that they would.
Oh, yeah.
But there's going to be problems there, but we'll see how that comes. I can tell you that the people who own this wanted to go somewhere where it's in the public view. That's the only, they do not want to sell it because a lot of people they've spoken to them. A lot of private people have said, I'd like to have it. They don't want to give it to someone who's going to keep it. They believe it should be.
Well, that's not going to advance anything, is it?
No, it won't. But look, let's just take the British Museum, and I won't go into details. They've already made an offer. Let's just say they may get it. They would not hide it after, believe me, because it's going to cost them a bit. They wouldn't hide it because people are going to know about it already. Okay, so it's already getting out, and it's well known in China now. They will display it. And if they display it, it's going to ask questions. What? 2,000 years ago? That doesn't fit in. I've got a history book. None of that's in there. Throw your book away. Start again. What are these chemicals doing in here? That shouldn't fit. Throw that science book away. That doesn't work either. And then you say to them, why do you believe the other things? I think this one opens the door up, mate. I think it opens the door for all the other ones that we can never get up because they keep saying, well, it doesn't fit. Well, this time, the British Museum is saying it doesn't fit. And they're normally one of the people, the ones who are fighting for the status quo. Yes. They've given up on it, and they're part of it. So I think what we've got to do is as quickly as we can, and I can tell you, because of what happened when that came out, the seal was on their place, but it's been moved. It would be too dangerous to keep it there because you can imagine there might be bad people that might find out where they are and turn up and say, give it to me. Well, it's been put in a place where they don't know where it is. And I'm putting it up in an article that's going up tomorrow because we've got to protect this thing. And we want it to get back into mainstream and then start opening up the door. And then we can all walk through behind that door, can't we, Mark? And we'd say, well, if that's there, why not this one? You'd said that didn't fit in, but your history book was wrong. Your science book was wrong. We proved it. Then that.
Well, this is advancing our knowledge, and that's the whole purpose of these sort of shows. That's the whole purpose of what I got into this for, is to advance knowledge, but to ask questions and put them out there. Like there's discoveries that I've made. I would say, I'm not asking you to believe it. I'm not pushing it down your throat. I'm not being a cult, but this looks interesting. And this is where the evidence leads. And then the right people will follow that evidence. The people who want to dispute it will never stop disputing it because their narrative is already embedded. So those people are always going to be part of what they would call an establishment view. But those are the people who will never break new ground. And those are the people who are stuck. And we don't want people who are stuck. We want people who are moving. And that's what this whole new civilization idea is all about. It's about really recognizing what was in the past, using it to move properly forward. Otherwise, there's no purpose in us being here.
Yeah, there is. That reminds me of Winston Churchill, made the best quote he ever made, because I'm not a great fan of his, but he did say one thing I agree with. He said this: if a country doesn't know its history, it has no future.
Exactly. And that's why this destruction of history is happening all over the world. The destruction of architecture, the taking away of historical buildings. It's happened all over Britain. Britain is unrecognizable now. Its ancient history, of course, in certain towns will remain because it's preserved under preservation orders. But the actual general history of the country is being absolutely destroyed. And Britain exports the destruction to all of the parts of the world through this technocratic system. And
yes,
they obviously they like to blame others for that, but Britain is destroying itself. So we need to move forward and actually look, especially in places like Australia, because they are still allegedly crown territories and they're still under the same jurisdiction that people in Britain suffer. And in Australia, I think it got even worse during the COVID era. It was really bad over there. So it's become incredibly authoritarian. So Australia, the Australians I knew, say 15, 20 years ago, very happy-go-lucky bunch. And the people who used to come over to Britain from Australia, loads of them I used to meet. And the new Australia is nothing like that. And that goes for what's happened to Britain. So we've been changed within 20 years. We've suffered a downfall of civilization and the way we actually were in the recent past. And when we're talking about going over thousands of years, then we have to be very aware that we are in a collapse of intelligence and progress.
Yeah, we are. You're right. We fully are. And what we're trying to do, both of us, is to bring back the past to create our own future. Because at the moment, the people who've stolen our future, they've stolen our past, their future is a really bad future. It's an awful future.
Well, it's no future.
It's
like an arrested development, which is going nowhere. So technocracy has ironically turned into arrested development for everybody.
I like that one. I'm going to use that. I like that phrase, arrested.
Oh, you can have that one. Yeah, get it out there.
I'm going to steal that off you, mate. Look, we might finish up for now if you're happy with that, because I think we covered that.
That's great. Perfect. We're just over the hour. Thanks a lot, Stephen. Another brilliant revelation for the people who want it. And do check out the archive at windowsontheworld.net. Do go to forgottenorigin.com. Forgottenorigin.com is where you'll find all of the artifacts that Stephen and Evan Strong, along with Leah, and you'll find all of their broadcasts, their live streams, and the artifacts that go back to when I've been speaking to you since 2014. So when does the Forgotten Origin go back to?
Forever.
5 years.
Yeah.
Oh, what? No, that's our alien ancestry. Forgotten Origins, what, 15 years?
15 years.
15 years.
15 years, yeah, because I remember when you started.
Yeah.
So the revelations that you made 15 years ago are still astonishing, but obviously there's only a small amount of people interested, but those small amount of people are so happy to receive that knowledge. And that's the feedback I get, and I'm sure it's the feedback you get. And we're on a kind of quest. I think it's very exciting, this stuff.
We are on a quest, mate, and we're trying to wake people up to the truth, and that's all we can do. And if we don't succeed, we keep trying till we leave. That's what.
Well, I think the right people will take notice. That seems to happen.
I think this time round, mate, we might be banging down that door that's been bolted. Particularly when I keep looking at the name of Dr. Luck, what is it, Dr. Luck? Oh God, I lost his name here. Dr. Luck Yuping. Dr. Luck Yuping from the British Museum.
Well, you've got heavyweights on board now, real establishment people, which is great.
That's what I want. Yeah, yeah. The guy from America is one of the top Chinese scholars in America. He knows everything. He even knows.
This is great news, Stephen.
Yeah,
And
it is. Mate.
So thanks very much.
Thank you.
I'll just have a word with you when we end this broadcast. So I'll just end it for the viewers who are going to watch it. And remember to tune into windowsontheworld.net. And we will have more live streams up soon. And do check out the archive. So thanks to Stephen, Evan, and Leah. And it's forgottenorigin.com.